Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations, where we share experiences from our hearts to empower others. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations. Today, our special guest is Christine Rose. Christine, like me, wants to use her voice to share her life experiences and awareness to support others and empowering themselves. Christine is a true possibilitarian, here to help other people know who they are and to know that living life in our full potential, awareness, and connection is our gift to experience. Christine is a voice, an energy signature that generates awareness, possibility, and action, uplifting and empowering people into greater well-being and personal transformation. Christine recruits people to love the life they live and to truly live the life they love. Christine currently lives with her husband and her 2 young sons on an urban organic farm with chickens and pigs in the heart of a beautiful city in Canada. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Patricia. And you know what? That is a really long handle when I hear that. But it's better than the alternative, right? Yeah. Like when you hear that about living your potential and helping others to understand that there's more to this life and that it is attainable and that we can do it, we can live a joyful life and be really happy in spite of everything that we know that's going on around us and the way that things have been set up. So I've been working on that handle a little bit, and I've had some help from Bjorn and Holly, and I've had different bios over the years. Even recently, I think Dawn's on here, and we did a bio for her recently because she's joined a group that I'm involved in called Conscious Living Alternatives, and we did a bio for her, and I gave her some samples of mine over the years. And I said, there's different ones here. One's for business and one's for, if you're writing an article and you want a little snippet, and there's just different ones. But this one that you just read off there, I like the most because it kind of encapsulates a lot of those different variations of myself over the years and the different roles that I've had. And I really like it because I'm trying, and trying is not really the right word because I'm not really preparing, like I said about this interview, I didn't want to prepare anything. I just wanted to show up and be present in the moment and see what comes up. And that's kind of how it is with my bio. I'm trying to get to that point where it says about it being an energy signature or a frequency or a dimension or a moment in time where conversations can be had that people can share and come together and connect and reflect with one another, and hopefully I'll have helped them and inspired them in some way to see more potential in their own life, because I've been through a lot in my own life. I had a lot of trauma as a child, and I had a survival mode kind of teenage and 20s where I was living on my own and worked many jobs, and I was really in the survival mentality and very much a victim, although I didn't feel like a victim. I kind of felt like I was just struggling. I just was trying to make sure my rent was paid, and I was going to school, and I was, waiting for the next big thing in my life to happen, but trying to keep all my balls in the air at the same time. And I didn't really have a lot of connectedness during that time. I was very disconnected because I was running around and doing so many things, and I had a very disjointed relationship with my family. Both of my parents weren't around. I lived on my own from the age of 14, so I kind of was off on my own, just trying to get by, trying to make it happen, and I wasn't really the person that I am today, although all of that sort of set me up for many great lessons, and just the whole being disconnected is a great lesson in itself, although it doesn't feel like it at the time. But I went through like a period where I felt very alone, and I felt like nobody understood me and or saw me really. And I just, I plugged in where I needed to be to get things done. I missed a lot of school because I was working, and I felt like nobody really cared if I did well on my studies, or if I passed, or if I even showed up. And so there was times in my life where I went through small depressions, even, where I'd wake up in the morning after having worked all night and have to get up to go and write an exam, and I'd be laying there thinking, who cares? Mm-hmm. Who cares if I get up and go in and do that, and do that thing? And sometimes it was really a struggle, and in those moments something would from within inspire me to just keep going, because it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And so I've always had sort of an inner guidance system and an inner GPS that kept me going. But I also always carried with me during that time this knowingness that the world seemed to be very backward, and we had our priorities all wrong, and that there was so much more to life. I like, sometimes if I'm with a certain group of people and we're talking about ourselves very deeply, I've even said, I came in here knowing that this was a backward reality, an inverted reality, and I've been waiting to get to the good stuff for a very long time, which is why that bio, if you want to call it a bio, that introduction is so good, because I actually feel, after coming through a lot of different things, and then I had some very big wake-ups. We can talk about all that stuff during the course of this call if you want, but the last 10 years have been a series of deaths and rebirths and wake-ups and coming to consciousness again and again and again. And it all circles back to this original knowing that I had about that the world was inverted and things just didn't make sense when I was younger. So I actually feel like I'm living in reverse and coming back to how it should be. And I think we've reached a time where a lot of the collective humanity have started to catch up to that knowingness and are starting to recognize, because there's been a whole lot of waking up going on the planet, a whole lot of revelations going on. And people are starting, I said on the call with Emma, that people have reached this sort of, the collective humanity has reached a point of willing to know that, hey, we've been doing it all wrong. Some things make sense, but the vast majority of things that we've grown up with in our generation and the generations before us, we're inverted and backward in a lot of ways. And we're starting to realize that now. And I think there's a lot of willingness within the collective to really take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing it, because things just aren't working. Things just aren't working out. People are tired. People are disconnected. People are running rat races. And at the end of the day, we're not sure why. Why is it like that? Why is it the way it is? Why is there a lot of darkness in the world? Why, do a lot of people feel like it's us or them, or light and dark and good and bad and all of that? When really we set it up that way. We've participated in it. We've believed in it. We have to take a lot of accountability for the way things are, and we can't just say, oh, we've been manipulated and there's a big matrix system going on, and there's darkness and entities out to get us, although that may very well be true in a lot of different ways. We have more power than we think or have thought that we do have, and we actually, by our belief in these things, set them up in our external reality. And we give them our power. We give them our, what we focus on grows. And when we put our attention on, that thing will grow. So if we're over here, like when I was in school and I was worried about paying the rent, and I was working 3 jobs and barely getting by at school and stressed out to the max, and those were my focuses. And there was a whole lot of life going on around me. There was a whole lot of connection going on around me. Connection with my parents, connection with nature, connection with a lot of different things. But I thought I had to do that. I thought I had to go to school. I thought I had to pay the rent. I thought I had to struggle. I thought all those things myself. I believed in the things that, say, my parents believed in, or the things that society believed in that structured that for me, and I just accepted it because I didn't know any better. And what I'm saying is, now I feel like there's so many people, and so much, never before have we had this potential on the planet where people actually are saying, wait a minute, I'm not willing to do this anymore. I want to look at it from a different perspective. I'm not going to give that darkness, that power structure, that company, that working structure, whatever it is, I'm not going to give them my energy anymore. I'm going to try something different for me. And people are starting to take back their power. So that's where I think we are. And that's why when you read that intro where it says about living, you know, a life of joy and potential and living to our full potential, I'm really doing that. I've been doing that for about 10 years, like really in many different ways in my life, making changes, making shifts, cutting this shit out, not believing in those things, not listening to those people, doing their own thing. And in spite of what anyone thinks about it, in spite of what my parents think, in spite of, you know, what my neighbors think even. Like I do all kinds of things at my house that no one else in the street's doing. You know, I have, chickens and pigs, and I'm in the middle of a city on a street in the oldest part of town. So it's like the heart of the city. And there's like I'm at the core of the city, and there's like a lot of people around me, and I have very big bonfires in my backyard. And, you know, and my dad will say, you're going to get a fine. They're going to come and they're going to give you a fine. And how can you have pigs and do that? Because he lives right here in the city too. He shows up at my house every other day. And he's always going on about what's going to happen, and it never happens. And I said, well, I'm waiting for them to come and take my pigs. But, you know, in 5 years, nobody said a word, you know? So, you know, sometimes just because things are the way that they say they are, we can push those boundaries and say how we're going to set it up and just figure out what happens. Find out what happens when you don't buy into what everyone else is buying into. And what I have found out most of all is that the world doesn't fall apart. What you've been told and maybe had fears about what was going to happen doesn't always happen. I mean, maybe it does sometimes, but it hasn't in my case. Nothing I believed fell apart. I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose the things I thought I was going to lose if I quit my job or if I did certain things. And in fact, in a lot of ways, life really, really vastly improved. So I think, you know, we should maybe talk about that sort of stuff. And the other part of that intro with the energy signature part, and the part about planning. So when I said, you know, I don't plan, I used to be. I was a spokesperson for a supplement company. I helped a woman build a school about women's empowerment, and I spent 5 years working with her, developing plans and programs and stuff, and bringing people on board to join the school and to, you know, learn how to become a coach or learn how to become an empowered person, that sort of thing. And we did a lot of planning during those days. And then all of a sudden, everybody started to become coaches and started to put their stuff out in the world. And I got very turned off by all the marketing, and everybody was selling something. And, you know, I got turned off by Facebook. I think Facebook kind of overwhelms me a lot because like everybody has something to sell. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I am saying that I noticed that there's a lot of inauthenticity going on, or a lot of people just coming up with something even though they hadn't lived it themselves or walked it and learned it themselves. And it just mass bombardment of people, a lot of them basically lying. And I know that's a judgment, but I was pretty close to it. So, you know, I got sort of turned off by all of that. And that's not why I don't plan things now, but it is part of the reason. Like, I almost left Facebook completely. I stopped doing everything I was doing with the supplement company and everything else. And I got really quiet, and I reframed my life, and I took a real good look at things. And it took me a while to come back on Facebook and come back to this arena. And I'm going to blame Bjorn because he told me that, you know, there was more here for me, and he really motivated me to maybe start talking again and doing my writing again and different things like that. And it's really worked out well. And he and Holly, who's also on here, are partners with me in a page that I started over 10 years, probably 12 years ago now, called Living Better. And it lay dormant for a while I was going through that process of you know, taking myself offline and just living in my local environment and spending time with my kids and my family. I actually had to reorganize my whole personal life because of one of those deaths and rebirths that I mentioned. And so during that time, you know, I was turned off of a lot of the stuff online, and I'm glad to be back. And the past year or so, I met so many people in alternative media, and so many people who really do have their thumb on the pulse of what's actually really going on, and they're not paying attention to all the media and in the ways that we're being manipulated, and we are being manipulated by media and corporations and big banks and so on and so forth. So that gave me hope. That I thought, oh, there's people that exist that know this is all backwards, and I'm going to align with these people. And I met some really great people in the last year or so who've become friends with me, and it inspired me to have more hope for humanity and crawl out from under my rock and come back here and have these kinds of conversations. So I appreciate you having me on, Patricia, and I really appreciate being here, and I love having gotten to know you a little bit over the last year as well, and seen a couple of your shows, and I hope we can have a great conversation today about all of this.
Yeah, thank you. And I do as well. And I'm sorry about the dinging you all, but I tried to turn this off and it didn't work. So we're kind of stuck with it if anyone else joins in. But, and I'm going to take it off. I wanted to have you focus while you were sharing. The reason that I wanted Christine on is because we connected right when I was getting ready to start Interstellar, and she shared her experiences with me, and we had a very similar past in the way that we, at a young age, kind of had to be independent and on our own, and we experienced trauma through our childhood. And I feel like we both approached it in the same way, where that you could say, well, I was a child of trauma and I was what the world would see as a victim. There was something inside of us that didn't allow us to live as a victim. So we allowed ourselves to find this inner strength and to take responsibility for the lives that we wanted to create. In my situation, I didn't really have a structure. So I didn't grow up with morals or parents that were trying to mold me into anything. So there was no one pushing me to get an education. There was no one trying to really push me towards being a good citizen or whatever. I was probably in survival mode from almost birth in reality, and because I didn't have functioning people around me. So I really didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations, which is a little bit daunting within itself when you're trying to figure out who you are in the world. Because, it was kind of like any of the family members that I did have, if I could accomplish something very simple, they're like, well, at least you're not in the gutter. At least you're not on the streets doing drugs. I mean, there was nothing that I could do, or they weren't looking for any kind of achievement from me on any level, because they didn't think I should even be alive, And so even that as a kid is kind of hard to process, because you are just trying to figure out your place in the world, and you are your own support system. And so if you didn't have this inner strength, what would you be doing? And so I just feel like that when I was, that was just the way that I came into this incarnation, was that this was just the way that this life was set up. And at some point through all of these experiences, they were going to be empowering me, and in empowering me, it would empower others. And so that's why I like to do what I'm doing now. And that's why the webinars are really important to me. And I do agree with what you're saying, Christine, too. It kind of felt to me like that everything has been, I don't even feel like I can do things sometimes without someone expecting it to be for monetary compensation, even though money is a very necessary part of our reality and we have to function that way. But it feels like it's like, pay me for this, pay me for that, do this. And I've participated in things that I've walked away going, what just happened? I have seen that so many people that have gone through trauma go through all these different healing modalities, and all these people that are claiming to be healers, and they'll come and talk to me and they'll say, look, I've been going through this for 20 or 25 years. And I'm like, why the world have you been going through this for 20 or 25 years, spending thousands and thousands of dollars and still feeling defeated in life? That's a problem. And so to me, one of the things that really became in my awareness is that communication, when we share our story, when you have someone like Bjorn that can write the most horrific thing that could happen in someone's life, but turn it into something so beautiful and so empowering, that is a healing that is taking place when someone reads that. That's someone that has gone into their heart and seen what someone's pain is like and knows how to put that in words, and it's healing to the person that's reading it. And it's when we communicate verbally with one another and we share everything that we've gone through, and it feels very uncomfortable to be vulnerable. It feels uncomfortable for people to see you in your weakness. But when we do that, we empower ourselves and we empower those around us to be able to talk about what they've experienced. And that, to me, has been the most healing thing that I've done. There's nothing else other than me speaking, me being heard, me going in and looking at my own choices in life and taking responsibility. That's what's been healing to me. And so to me, this is what 2017 was like, a time for me to come into my own in this type of environment, because this was very hard for me, because I don't like to be looked at, or I don't even want to listen to my own voice, things like that. I still have that stuff that I have to deal with on my own. But then it really made me so clear on what I wanted for 2018 and where to go with Interstellar in the future. And that's as many webinars and bringing together groups of people that I can do to where we have conversations like this. For anyone, you don't have to be a public figure that travels around the planet. You are you are an author, you are a creator, you have a story, and everything that you share is important and relevant to anyone that wants to be present.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. You just brought up something. I want to say two things. First of all, I want to reflect back to you that I love, and not to take credit for it in any way, shape, or form, but I remember when you were talking about becoming, doing these interviews and these hostings, and I listened to one that you did with George Kavasilis, and I said to you, you're really good at that. You really, are unafraid to ask questions and to not know the answers and to struggle with an answer and to, in the moment, really be in the moment and search yourself at the risk of looking foolish or any other, judgment. But to stay with it and to seek out the answer that you're looking for. And I really admired that about you and encouraged you to go and start to do these types of interviews. And I knew you'd be really good at it, and you are. And that is part of your energy signature. That's what I mean by, figuring out how we can use what we've been through and what our gifts are to really serve in a way that lights us up and that brings us joy. Because at the end of the day, that's, what we need to be doing. We need to be focusing on what makes us happy, what brings us joy, how we feel we can serve if that's what brings us joy. And that's not the thing that brings everybody joy, but for most people that I've met anyway, it's a big one. And I'm so happy for you that you've been able to do that. And I know you're going to be getting better and better and better at it. You've only been at it not even a year, I don't think. So that's wonderful. And you just brought up something else that when you reflected back to me about our similar backgrounds, I want to tell you that our backgrounds are actually way more similar than you actually are aware of, that you actually know. Because sometimes when I'm talking about my past, it seems like a really long, long time ago. Like when I was a child was so long ago, and I don't live there anymore, that I don't always bring those bits of it with me in the moment, which is where I live now. I live really in the moment. And some of that seems like a long, long time ago. And also the way that I operate is about, I can be having a conversation and pull in pieces of different parts of my life and what I've been through in the moment that come from, different dimensions or different realities that I've participated in via my levels of consciousness over that long period of time. So, we can see something one way 10 years ago and go through the exact same story, the exact same thing, and see it from a whole different perspective now. And now is kind of where I'm living now. So even though I may not say, every bit about my childhood trauma that I went through and so on, that I really did go through a lot of trauma and a lot of separation. And I didn't have parents either when I was a child. And you've helped me to maybe be more specific and to sort of say maybe more in depth about things and to try to pull focus a little bit better. So I appreciate that as well. And I don't mean to gloss over things, and people are welcome to ask me any questions that you want to. But the truth about the childhood is that I've been abducted 3 times in my life, and not by aliens. Any one of those times, it was not by aliens. And the first time that I was abducted was actually by my mother when I was a young child. And, probably around a year old or so. And she took me and moved in with a boss from her work in another city and didn't tell my dad where we were going. And anyway, he found out where we were, and he came to her place and surprised her one day and said, "I just want to see Christine." And, she said she was shocked and didn't know what to do in the moment. She said, "Okay." And anyway, she turned her back for a moment, and he went running down the street with me to where he had a buddy have a van running, and just hopped in the back of it and kept on going. And I never met my mom again until I was 11 years old. And all that time we were on the run. So I moved a lot as a child and went to different schools. And my dad was very young. He was 23 when I was born. And so, and he was a jock. He was into a lot of sports. So he would actually leave me with a lot of strangers and babysitters. And I'd never really felt comfortable in my surroundings because we moved so often, and I was the new kid in school. And there was, times where he would leave me with friends of his or friends of the family or whatever. People I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any family around me or even a home when I was a child. And we moved a lot. And so I have a lot of experiences of feeling uncomfortable, feeling fear, not being familiar with my surroundings. And then, of course, when you're like that, and that's how I became very, very introverted, very shy. I hated being the center of attention. I hated being the new kid in school. I'd go to a new school, and we would move provinces in Canada. I'm in Canada. So, I'd leave one province where we were learning subtraction, and I'd move to another province, and they'd be working on fractions. And, I was just lost. I couldn't keep up in school, and I didn't have a support structure. I didn't have parents. My dad was very good, and he really loved me. But like I said, he was young, and he was busy, and he had a lot of sports and things going on. So, it was really hard. And I lived with a lot of fear, and I didn't have a lot of structure or people expecting things of me. So sometimes when I talk about like what I just said, I'm talking more about society in general and how, because I did learn how to get along in society, and, that you had to work to pay money, and I was living on my own. I needed a place, so I knew I had to work. So when I say, people had expectations of me, it's largely just what I picked up along the way from society, not really from a parental sort of thing either. But so I just wanted to be clear about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I will say this too, like I know that I go really into depth when I'm sharing about my experiences. And so, and I try to pull that out of other people for a really important reason. And it could be just stuff that I do for myself, but I have found it with the people that I've really connected with, that it's also very healing for them, because it'll actually allow them to share things that they felt like they were too ashamed to share. And they didn't think anyone wanted to hear it. So when I would say, well, why don't you tell me about that? And they were like, well, no one's ever asked me about that before. And if I did try to tell them, they didn't want to hear it. And what it does is it creates, from what I've discovered, is it creates a connection where we can relate to one another. And so when I'm brave enough to tell something that I experienced, then someone else goes, oh, finally somebody that's not trying to pretend like there's someone that they're not, and that can relate to who I am. And now that we can have an honest communication. Yeah. And so I may go, a lot more into depth than most people are comfortable with, but I have a really good reason for doing that. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so what, there's, all of us have gone through different things in our life. Not everybody went through severe trauma, but there were still things that they experienced in life where they just felt disempowered, and they wanted to, and they knew that there was things that were not right with the system, and they wanted to find their way to express themselves and to thrive and to be the best that they could be. And so what I really would like is to, let you share what it is that, like, at what point did you decide that it was time to turn away from the traumas, turn away from the negativity or whatever? When did you find that moment where you were going to like live in your empowerment?
I think for me, it came, I think for me, the real moments came when I started to feel worn out. I started to feel very tired. And, right, it was after I got married, which was 17 years ago, 18 years ago now. And I started having children 12 years ago. It was probably around that time when I started to wear even more hats. Like, I became a wife and a mother, and I had a house and different things. And then I feel like it all catches up with you. And I started to feel really kind of worn out, another thing, even though it was a very joyful time, like when you're a new mom and it's a joyful time in your life. But I felt like, I had to do something to change my energy. I had to do something to, be more joyful in the joyous parts of my life. And I was carrying a lot of baggage, and I had a lot of, wear and tear, if you will, and a lot of repression. I had repressed a lot of things that, maybe weren't that dealt with. And so when I met my mom, for the first few years I knew her, we only saw each other infrequently. And, so we didn't do a lot of uncovering the past. And even when I made attempts at that, what happens is find out that other people are unwilling, or other people don't want to talk about. Other people may have guilt around certain things. And so if you bring something up, it's not always as easy as just being received by another person. And so you can tend to be triggered further or taken into even more repression and suppression because of the reaction that you get from other people. I think you said something about other people don't want to hear it. And so yeah, it's a dance. It's a dance for sure. And, I knocked up against a lot of that for a while, and then came to a place where I knew I got to do it for me. I have to just really do my own inner work for me. And I, went through a process where what I call reparenting myself. Mm-hmm. And I timelined out events that I could remember from my childhood that were very traumatic for me. And I made like a timeline, and I went back into each of those events, and I had a couple of good coaches at the time. And I really got in touch with the emotions that I felt that I was unable to feel, or was, because my dad would shut me down as a child if I said to him, "Where's my mom? How come I don't have a mom? How come we're moving again? I have to give away my toys again." And, because every time we moved, I had to leave everything behind because I'm in the car, So there's a lot of things that I didn't understand about what was going on about my world. And I couldn't talk about them, because then my dad would get angry, and he would say, why don't you focus on the positive, and shut me down. And so, I timelined out a bunch of things, and I went back in and really took a look at those things and allowed myself to feel the feelings that I wish I had been able to express when I was a child, and got in touch with that same vibrational frequency of whatever it was at the time: fear, anger, sadness, neglect. I mostly struggled with worthiness because I felt like my own mother didn't want me. My own mother didn't come for me. Why is this all happening to me and my own mother doesn't even want me? And even my dad, when he would shut me down, it made me feel unworthy and ungrateful for my own feelings. So I learned a lot about that I wasn't going to be seen or heard, and that I wasn't worth the time and energy to invest in myself. So when I reparented myself, I gave that to myself. And I really went into all of that stuff and felt it and allowed it to come up. But I had huge memory blocks. I had huge gaps because I did, like, when you're an introverted, shy child, always on the move, it's like you have a big target on your back. Like, people can tell there's something, you're quiet. If I abuse you, you're probably not going to say anything. Mm-hmm. If I mistreat you, you're probably just going to be quiet and listen to me because you'll believe me and you don't want to rock the boat because it's obvious that you've been trained to be that way. Mm-hmm. So I encountered things throughout my life. And this is where it gets kind of similar to you, Patricia, because I heard your story one time and I thought, there's similar things to my own, where things would happen to me that seemed really, really bizarre. And why is that? And then of course you get into this mind control and this trauma-based mind control, and whether things have actually happened to you to take you out. And, so start asking a lot of questions about what's really going on in reality when you have, such a weird childhood. But, so for instance, when I was about 6 years old, my dad left me with friends of the family, and he went to a rugby tournament in Hawaii, and we went, the family and I, who I didn't know them at all, and I'm really young, and we drove to Alaska. We drove the highway out to Alaska and stayed in Alaska for, I don't even know how long, like several weeks anyway, camping with this family I didn't know. The whole time I was in extreme terror. That whole trip, because I was young. Who knows where my mother is? My dad's in Hawaii, and I'm with a strange family driving in a car out in the middle of nowhere, camping with people. And I felt like I couldn't say anything. I had no power. I had no power in the situation at all, and it was very traumatic for me. So that's one of the bigger ones on my timeline, that I would go back in and really feel those emotions, that frustration of being powerless and feeling abandoned and uncared for and put in a dangerous situation that, I had to play along. I had to pretend everything was all right, and that wasn't right. And it wasn't something that should have happened to me. And it did. And there's another time when I lived with my dad, and again around the age of 6, there was a park across the street from where we lived in our house, and my dad would let me play in that park by myself. And so when I was in the park one day, a guy was sort of hanging about and shuffling around, looking at the ground, and he seemed like he was looking for something. And eventually he told me that he lost his watch. And I was shy, introverted, helpful, quiet, person. And I ended up helping him look around for his watch. And I guess we got a little away to the edge of the park or whatever, and he picked me up and started running with me and kidnapped me. And that was I mentioned before, I was abducted 3 times. That was the 3rd time. Okay. And so he took me to a construction site, and there's like a concrete room and an unfinished toilet, and just sort of, it was a building site. and proceeded to start raping me and telling me he's going to shove my head down the toilet if I said anything, or if I, you know, made too much noise or whatever. And something in that moment went off for me, and I just kind of, if there's a moment where you can feel your own powerfulness and you can feel your own divinity, or you can feel your own, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I kind of freaked him out. Like, I just started screaming, and I started to make so much noise and was fighting so much that I ended up getting away from him, and I escaped. Like, I got out of there, and but I didn't know where I was. Mm-hmm. And I was walking around the streets partially dressed, you know, and an area I didn't know where I was. And this is just to give you an idea of the unworthiness that I felt. I felt that it was more important that my dad not be mad at me for not being in the park where I should have been. Like, I was more worried about, you know, my dad being upset with me for not being in the park and for talking to strangers or whatever. And so when I'm walking around trying to find my way home in Alberta, this was in Alberta, there's pop bottles that you know, some people throw them away, but they're worth money, they're worth a refund. And I remember I had picked up a couple in my travels in the hopes that whenever I did find my dad, that he wouldn't be mad at me because I found these pop bottles, right? And so he came down the street, like at one point I was coming this way and he was coming that way, and he found me, and all I said was, "Look, Dad, look what I found." Mm. You know, and that's so sad to me when I hear it now, that, you know, here all of this can happen to me, but the only thing that I'm worried about is my dad being upset with me, you know. And it was so it's one of those moments that when you go back and you timeline it out and you realize, you know, what if you had a normal, you know, childhood or normal parents or whatever, maybe you wouldn't even A, be in the situation that you're in, B, you certainly wouldn't be feeling those types of feelings about yourself. You would have, you know, had support or had some, you know, loving people in your life, right? Yeah. And so these are all sort of things that I went through, and I can't really explain why they happened. I mean, there's lots of ways that we can guess, or we can say, well, yeah, you had a target on your back and you looked like a lonely child and an easy target, and these things happen to people like that. And there is some truth in that, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's some grand evil plan going on the planet, you know, but it does mean that we have to take accountability as individuals who have things happen to them or for them. We have to take accountability for those things. Otherwise, you know, we carry them as baggage, we carry them as wounds within us, and there comes a point where they do add up, and we have to really take a look at them and do the work so that we can move through them and feel more whole. Because I'll tell you, when I did that work and that reparenting work and the timelining work with those coaches, it's like weights were lifted off of me, off of my spirit. It was like new capacity, new energy was found. And it took a lot of courage to go in and really get into an alignment with those traumas and re-feel them, basically. But it's so worth it. And you build a courage muscle, you build your muscles, you build your ability to face fear, you build your ability to face the unknown, even because there's huge memory gaps sometimes and you don't know what's there. And sometimes the story will come together even clearer for you, and you recognize that other people are also going through things. So, you know, my dad, even though, you know, I wouldn't leave my child alone in a park today, there's many reasons why I wouldn't do that, not just because of what happened to me, but just because we live in a different time now as well. But, you know, I could go through my whole life blaming my dad for leaving me there or for my mom not being around, right? If I didn't go in and do the work to actually heal myself, to get over it for myself. And I would prefer to have the power rest with me than have external events and things have that kind of power over me to limit my ability to function as a more free person right now. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. Like one of the things when you were introducing yourself too about your energy signature, we all have this energy signature that identifies us in the universe, is the way that I see it. And that, as a child, I think, one of the things that we all come in with is, our innocence. And, there's going to be particular energy signatures that predators are kind of drawn to, that they can recognize. I mean, I can recognize predators because of the childhood that I had. As soon as I'm in there, I don't have to know them. All I have to do is connect to that energy. And I know exactly who that person is. And it's not a judgment. It's just like, okay, I know who you are, so I'm prepared for that situation. And, when you were talking about, well, why would this happen? Like maybe you're not a target, but why are these things happening? Well, I think it has a lot to do with that energy signature that someone sees in us, that they're trying to absorb and feed off of that purity and that innocence. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard me share this before, but I just feel like it's so interesting that how you can live in a state of fear when you really, like we talk about, well, there's fear, but why do we have this fear? Because we are greater than that fear. I'm 50, I'll be 51 in March. And like I said, I don't know if I've shared this in an interview before, but I've shared it. And I've always drawn an abductor or a predator to myself, or they've been drawn to me, however you want to phrase it. And I was so sick of this. I'm like, I'm 50 years old. It's time for this to stop, because I've been doing healing work, really deep healing work from 2014 until 2017. And just really focused on it. And I wanted freedom from all the pain and the trauma and the, lack of self-worth. And I had, for my first walk on a trail was at 50 years old by myself. And I still was, when I went on that trail, I was still looking. I had like 4 or 5 options, and I was going, which one looks like I could get out of the quickest? Which one feels the safest? I mean, I was really going to push myself to do this. And I'm thinking I'm crazy the whole time. And a guy walks by and he's on the trail. So I probably won't do that trail. And it was really nothing to do with him. It was just like, I don't know if I want to go there. And I mean, I was so proud of myself because I took a 45-minute walk in a wooded trail by myself.
Yeah.
And that's something, I mean, I've got friends that, have hiked around the world by themselves. No problem. I can't walk out the front door without somebody showing up in my driveway going, hey, lady, can I take you for a ride? So so somebody else, it's like not a big deal, but for me, it would be everything. So I can relate, to what you're sharing. And, if you're okay with it, I mean, if there's anything that Christine has shared that anyone would like to share now and maybe communicate with Christine about some of your experiences and how you relate to her, or anything that you just want to ask her, if she's okay with that, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Any wisdom?
I think that's it.
I've been through a lot of trauma in my life too, and I just wanted to say that, and the worthiness issues, and I'm just now coming out of it, where I feel like that I can heal. I've held on to it all my life, and I carried a lot on my shoulders too.
You've got a little bit. You've got some background noise, and we can't hear you real well.
Oh, you can't?
No. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you just got background noise, and it's kind of overriding you.
Oh. I was going to say that I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, and I carried it on my shoulders for 15 years, and I'm still working through it. And I'm coming to a place where I feel like that I can let go of it now and actually heal it. but I still got work to do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we, you know, we'll all have work to do. There's no one that's done their work. I have never met someone, and I've met a lot of really, really conscious people and people who have, you know, their shit together. And I'll tell you, they're still working on their stuff, and they'll probably be working on their stuff long after we're all gone, you know? So, you know, we're amazing. We're amazing beings. And there's so much that we can overcome, and we are overcoming. And I don't, you know, I'm at the place now where I want people to feel that. I really want people to feel how special we are, how much power we have, how we are created to live and experience a glorious life. We are meant to be in joy and happiness and truth and beauty and freedom. That is what we are. We are. That's what truth is. Truth is beauty. Truth is love. Truth is joy. And anything that is not those things is not truth. And we go through all of these experiences in our lives that can make people, you know, feel like that is an impossibility. And it really isn't an impossibility. It really isn't an impossibility. It really comes down to what we believe about ourselves and what we allow ourselves, or what we open ourselves to, what we can become, like Patricia said, vulnerable about. You know, and we have to really dive into self-love and start with self-love. I mean, if we may not have a whole lot of self-worth, we may not have our worthiness muscle built up yet, we may not have done a lot of our own work, but we really have to step into some self-love and really feel that, really feel it deeply, that, you know what, you know, this is my life. No one else is living this life for me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have choices in front of me where I can continue things as they are, and they're going to keep building up. Like you said, Dusty, like I said to Patricia, that things are going to keep layering themselves on, unless and until we take a real look at, you know, what's operating us, what our belief systems are, what, you know, why we keep repeating the same patterns, for example, and so on. And so let me tell a story about that, just to illustrate how things can change. And Bjorn, I know you have a good story about that too, but I actually have a story about you, Bjorn. So let me start with that. And then I'm going to remind me, Patricia, if I forget, to talk about this Christmas, one of the things that I learned this Christmas. So, but I'm going to start with my story about Bjorn. Okay, so Bjorn and I did a video about a year ago now. I think it was last March. And we called it Shadow Dancing. And it was about our healing journey. You can find it on Living Better, probably on my wall somewhere too. But and I can repost it. I'll repost it after this. But it's about our healing journey in terms of dealing with our shadow, in terms of dealing with these things that come up throughout our life, these belief systems and these self-limiting beliefs. And, you know, it's really about this reparenting and going back through and honoring ourselves, honoring our journey, being there for ourselves the way that people may not have been there for us when we needed them, and doing it now from a place of self-love and self-worth and confidence, and really going in and finding out that those dragons are really just, you know, dragons that are there dragging us down, right? But we are the knight in shining armor for ourselves. So we did this call like about a year ago, and in that call, Bjorn and I were just talking, and it was impromptu, and we said, you know what, the world needs to hear this, let's make it into a video. And so I did. But during that call, Bjorn said all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things. And he, you know, we were reflecting back and forth our different processes. And we were talking about how when you go back to a situation or a relationship, or like, you know, for instance, with your parents later on, and you spend like Christmas dinner with your family, years after this trauma happens, but you're still a family, so you still spend Christmas together and you're sitting there at the table, but you've done your work now. You've, healed yourself or gone back and reparented yourself and got over some things, and you're lighter now. You have more capacity now. You have a different vibration now. You're not carrying all that heavy weight now. You're you're able to sit at that dinner and talk with the people around you, and if that thing comes up, you see it now from a different perspective or another dimension. We were joking about, is it a perspective or a dimension or a level of consciousness? They're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. So, because we're lighter, because our frequency is different, we're vibrating at a different frequency. Now, if that same thing comes up, we see it from a different perspective. And we are not triggered the way that maybe in the past we would have been, or we would have felt less than or unworthy or whatever it was. And he said a bunch of things during that call, and I thought I knew what he meant at the time. We were having this glorious conversation and back and forth, and I meant some things and he meant some things, but I listened to it again, Bjorn, and this is the funny thing. I listened to it like a week ago, the same call, and I've changed so much just since last March in my levels of conscious awareness, and there's been so much with the energies coming into the planet and all of this stuff being revealed, and we are constantly shifting. We're constantly growing and shifting. And anyway, I listened to that same call not even a year later, and I picked up on things you said, Bjorn, that I didn't even catch in the first pass, and I've listened to it probably 3 or 4 times, but I listened to it again, and there was new revelations for me in that same call. And so this is what I mean when I say that, we can now go back to the same scene of the crime or the same patterns within families from a different awareness and a different consciousness, and the friction is gone. The part that irritated us or that made us become small or climb back into the box and behave the way we used to behave, you just can't do it anymore. You're not even conscious of you're conscious, but you're not in that same consciousness that where that mess was, where that friction was, where that struggle was. The struggle is gone. So you're showing up differently. You're in a different consciousness, a different vibration now. And, it's not necessarily that they've changed or anything's different, but when they meet your energy now, they're like, that's not the same energy anymore. And their energy also invariably, and I would bet money it's always going to be a bit later, because if you're showing up in that new frequency, that new consciousness, and they're like, okay, that thing just isn't existing here anymore. It's a whole new experience. And I had that this Christmas with my mom because I went to her house for Christmas, and I've done a lot of work around that relationship, and we went there, packed up the kids, drove up there. I didn't take anything with me. Like I said to you, Patricia, about this call, about how I just show up, and I take all my knowledge, all my consciousness, all my awareness, where I'm at right now with me in the moment, with no expectations of anything. I don't need anything from anybody else. I don't need them to treat me a certain way or respect me a certain way, or I don't need anything. Whatever is going on with them is not going to change who I am and where I'm at. So I just show up and party. Let's have some fun. Let's see what happens and go with it. And so when I did that this year, I got there, and immediately, it was just an immediately different experience with my mom. And we had this, we talked, we just kept talking and talking about whatever came up, and we had a bunch of laughs. And before I knew it, it was time to go home. And when people ask me, how was your Christmas? How was your Christmas? And it was really a joyful experience with my mom. I have 3 different family things going on. So the experience with my mom was really a joyful experience. It was a totally different exchange than at any other time. And she met me where I'm at, and I met her where she's at, and there wasn't any friction at all in our exchange, which I can't ever remember a time where there hasn't been some kind of a friction going on. So, and this is what I mean when I say there's hope for humanity, because if I can get through these scenarios with my family and with my Christmas dinners and the stuff that I've been through in my life, everybody can do it. Anybody can do it. I have hope that you can do it, and you can do it, and you can do it, and you can do it. And, you know, this is, you get a car, you get to be president. Do you know what I mean? Like, just seriously.
Yeah, because one of the things that you're expressing that's really speaking to me is that when I might have been in the presence of someone that there was these deep-rooted issues, and I was triggered by them, I could go into the room and my face would get red, my body would get shaky, I would just have all this anxiety, and I'd be triggered by everything. And then once I started doing my own work, it really had nothing to do with them at that point, because I took responsibility for how I was going to feel and how I was going to have an exchange with whoever that person might be. And then it's like, okay, well, I am now changing the pattern. I'm not going to continue this pattern of negative experiences. So I'm going to change the way that I react to the situation. Well, I'm not going to react. I'm actually going to not react. And the past is almost like, it's not that I'm disconnected from the past, because I like you, I'm living in the present. The past for me is just, it's a memory. It's like going back and reading a book, and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. And yeah, that's my life story, but I'm not triggered by that. And it just, now I can just be in that moment and observe the story. Like, you know, there's a time, like I always say, you know, you're the author, and then you're an actor, and you're an audience or an observer. And I feel like for the most part now I live my life in observance. And someone might think, well, isn't that cold? And no, that's actually going through all of the different processes to where I've been reactionary, I've been in the trauma, you know, I've gone through the healing processes. And of course, there's still, like you were saying, there's still things that we're going to go through. So when we're talking about trauma, it's not to belabor the issue, because what we're really trying to say is look at the shit that we've been through, look at all that, you know, we have experienced, and now we're taking ownership and we're saying, no, we're changing these patterns. We are creator beings, and we are going to take responsibility and accountability. And how anyone else perceives us, that's not really our issue. If we act in integrity from our heart with pure intentions, I don't have to be concerned with how someone responds to that, because I don't have anything to feel badly about or anything to judge myself about.
Yeah, and so now you can also see why at the start of this call, I'm in the bio part, I'm so much more focused now on where we're going than where we've been. Me personally, I've already been through that over and over again. I'm more excited about where we're going. I'm more excited about, helping other people and about watching it all unfold. Like, so as things are breaking down in society, as things are being revealed, I'm actually getting more and more joyful. I'm getting more and more joyful because we're coming back around to the way, hopefully, I mean, this is just my perspective. I'm not trying to sway anybody's opinion, and you don't have to agree with me, but I personally feel that the changes that are happening right now on the planet, in terms of the energy on the planet, in terms of the collective consciousness rising and the awareness is rising, moment to moment, people are living in the moment. They're not caught up in all of the mind stuff anymore, and all of the programs about what you're supposed to do and say and act and work, and all that stuff is lessening. And there's this willingness now on the planet to try new things, to look at things differently, to not participate in the ways that reality has been constructed for us, or that we've participated in from when we were small. Mm-hmm. And so all of this together with my own healing and with what I see other people doing, and people not buying the programs, not drinking the soda anymore, whether that's external soda or our own internal stuff, mm-hmm. that we're now able to deal with, and we recognize that we need to deal with, because part of the reason why things are set up the way they are is to keep us in that limited capacity, to keep us running the rat race, following the rules, paying the taxes, doing this, keeping us tired, keeping us, working for the working for the man, all the ways that we're sort of not feeling the truth of who we are, not feeling our full potential, our full capacity, making space for more. And, I'm going to use the word abundance. I know that gets thrown around a lot, but we've had a limited frame of reference. We've had a very limited frame of reference, the ways that we've been taught and how we're supposed to show up and participate in this world. And when we can start to think more abundantly and from a more a place of more capacity, we can start to see the potential for a different world. We can start to actually really think, and have our confidence muscle grow by looking around at the breakdown of things. And we can really start to see that it's possible for people to come together, have communication like this, start to talk about what we're going to build, what now is going to come in and what we're going to build and what we're going to focus on, and how we're going to quit that job and do something else that lights us up, and how we're going to participate differently and build and grow together. So that's where I'm now mostly focused, is on how am I going to show up for me now? What do I want now that I've been able to clean up my own programming and where I've been? What do I want for me? So I'm starting to build with like-minded, like-hearted individuals, hopefully a new world, a better world. And I'm serious about that. I mean, it's a big ballpark, kind of vision where I really want to collaborate with people who care about the earth, who care about the pollution on the earth, who care about humanity, who care about the structure that's currently in place and build a different structure. I'm interested in Ubuntu kind of thinking around societies, setting up societies, not having as much of a basis on the monetary system. I mean, I know that's the way we do things right now, but I'd love for more barter and trade to come in. I would love for, what do you call it? Like credit card debt to be capped at like 5% instead of like the whatever it's up to now, 30% or 35%. Sometimes credit card debt and debts, they should be capped. There's businesses and so on making so much money, the big guys making so much money, and the little guys are struggling. And now in Canada, we have this thing going on right now, for example, where Tim Hortons, there's a backlash against this big coffee place called Tim Hortons, where middle managers, like small business owners, have to pay, are being penalized to pay more money for whatever, and they're having to lay off employees or take away the employee benefits and so on in order to cover this off. But yet, we've got these big conglomerates and whatever taking all of this money and not being penalized in the same way. So I mean, it really shows if people are really paying attention, instead of boycotting Tim Hortons, for example, maybe boycott the big banks instead and look at those interest rates and so on and do some other shifting going on, because all of this is meant to keep us in this limited reality where we're stressed out and running around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've been saying something really similar. I'm not really, I've gone through in my journey where I tried to protest against the government, protest this and protest that. I've been in courtrooms with friends and done the picketing, and I've watched people get arrested and all the different things that go along with it when you're caught up in the political movement and trying to make a change on a government level. And so I saw exactly what, the things that took place. I had friends that had, fought the birth certificate concept, didn't vaccinate their children, didn't have the birth certificates, but when they protested, that became an issue with the government. So they ended up having to go get a birth certificate and having to go get the vaccines because they chose to go protest. That they brought it into their awareness by doing that, or they were going to lose their children. So I've experienced so much, and I started really thinking about this over the, especially there is a lot of fear right now with artificial intelligence. There's a lot of fear around the political stuff that's going on in the world. And what I do know is that I can't make choices for other people, and I can't take the choices that I want and try to force them onto someone else. what I can do is I can create and co-create with those that are of like mind and create the world that I want to live in. And so that's where I look at, well, what are my intentions? And this is where we move from the trauma, the fear, all the disempowerment, and into empowerment by making choices that we know that are going to make our lives better. You know, we can't save everyone.
Yeah.
That's just not possible. That's not what we're here to do, but we can self-empower ourselves. And then I feel like that is something that just changes generation after generation. The more we empower ourselves, the more that you'll see the children empowered. And it's not to say that you won't see dark times on the planet, because we'd be, you know, this isn't like I'm going to be in denial that bad things won't still occur, that there still won't be people that suffer, because that's not something that we can avoid. But we can do everything within our power to create the life that we want, and for those that want to have that same type of lifestyle to create with us. So that's what I see. Like, I see right now that we're, you know, using artificial intelligence for something positive. I see that, you know, you may have skills where you can communicate and barter even through this artificial bartering can take place on this level too, because I do it myself right now with people. You know, if I have something to offer them and they have something to offer me, then I may share a service or something that I have, and they may share a service or a product that they have. I'm doing that currently. And so that's kind of what it's about, and getting away from the banking system. I'm not going to be a part of the debt system any longer. I just refuse to do it. And I'm creating from a place that brings joy. And so that's one of the things, you know, when you were sharing, because it's so funny, I always take notes, and we're always, when I'm doing these interviews and group discussions, we just seem to have a really good flow, because when I have a question or something, I always say, well, I'm going to go there next, and it just kind of flows, and there you go. Because one of the things that I was going to say is, you know, we've lost our joy. We have so many things that we see that we don't, that upset us in the world. And so we've lost our joy. So we have to find ways to bring back that joy. And that's, if we can't function from a place of joy, and it doesn't mean that we're oblivious to what's going on. It's just personal day-to-day life, because that's where you find that inner peace. What makes you happy? Like, what feels disempowering to you? I mean, if everybody that's here, if you were to sit right now and think about what, on a daily basis or any time that you're on a weekly basis, what makes you feel disempowered? And if you are experiencing that, why are you still participating in it? You know, if something is making you feel disempowered, why are you going back to that? That's a really good question to ask yourself.
Does anybody want to answer that? If nobody does, I can say something on that, but
okay.
I'm just looking at, I don't know if I can even see hands up. I probably can't.
Well, nobody has to raise a hand if you want to share. All you have to do is unmute your mic if you want to share, because I've put everybody as a panelist.
Okay, so one of the things that I find very disempowering right now on the planet is well, there's a couple. There's a few things that are really disempowering, but one of the big ones is the and when I talk, like, there's different ways we use words, right? So when you say AI and I say AI, I think we're talking more about the technology and how technology is being used. But like, I put up a Facebook post today earlier about AI, and that's the way I meant it. But other people sometimes take it to mean, you know, like an artificial intelligence that's infiltrating us all, and that, you know, wants to override the human system and, you know, merge with us, like the singularity, right? And so, but that's not always how I mean it when I post something. I may actually be talking about, you know, our ability to, like, have analytical intelligence about what's happening and why it's happening and how we feel about it and whether or not it serves us, and you know, sort of be able to take a look at how we are using our own internal technology to decipher how we feel about how AI or artificial intelligence, like phones and gizmos and gadgets and stuff, are affecting us. So it all comes down to perception in terms of how people use and see words. So when I say this, I just want to be clear. I feel that one of the main disempowering forces on the planet right now is this dependency on the technology, on the gadgets, on the incoming information. And one of the things that a lot of people have right now is an addiction to Facebook and an addiction to like scrolling all the time and looking for likes and looking for attention and sharing a lot of material, and really basically a lot of people, you know, are addicted now to this constant feedback loop of with this technology. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that one of the ways that we can be mind controlled is because corporations, governments, big money know that we're all addicted to this technology, and then they can start to channel information streams and material towards us that maybe keep us in a locked-in reality. So we are essentially giving our vote, you know, not completely consciously. Like, I mean, there's a lot of this is happening on the unconscious, subconscious level where, you know, our news feeds are full of negativity or are full of certain things that are keeping us in a limited reality. Like there's only certain topics covered. There's heavy on the negativity sometimes. There's these algorithms that show us what comes in our feeds, and we can be controlled this way. And so, you know, and kept in loops to spend money, be more, get, you know, get more and more addicted, let's say, to the feedback. So we have these emojis now, and we have, you know, all these different ways that give us this instant gratification and these shots of adrenaline and so on that keep us in these cyclical loops on Facebook. And I find it very disempowering. The whole idea, like, I don't find too much empowerment coming from that realm at all, unless and until we use it like we're doing now.
Yeah.
Like when we use it and it's not using us, that's the difference. So that's one way where we can be more mindful is, how do I feel when I'm using this? Do I get on here and just like zone out and scroll and like practically drool because I'm here so long, and you know, I don't recognize the rest of the world going on around me? And you know, or am I actually coming on here with a purpose and intention and spending, you know, a certain block of time on here, or I'm gathering in a meeting like this that hopefully has benefits for humanity, or I'm creating something like right now, I'm personally creating an alternate Facebook. So, you know, on the one hand, and this is where I struggle, on the one hand, I don't like a lot of what's happening on Facebook and with the feed that's coming back and with all the ways it's being manipulated. So, but I do agree that it gives people a place to come together and communicate with other like-minded individuals and share good, healthy content and so on and so forth. So I'm doing something about it. I'm actually creating an alternate Facebook, and it's called Conscious Living Alternatives. And I'm collaborating with like-minded, like-hearted individuals who want to have a better, let's say, social media experience rather than a mind-controlled experience, or, you know, a dumping ground and that sort of thing. And so right now we're in the process of building it and attracting membership for it and people with good, you know, conscious content and so on and so forth. And that's, so it's a way that I can use my own personal, you know, power and autonomy and sovereignty to utilize a system of technology for my own benefit, for my own creativity, for my own well-beingness, and have other like-minded, like-hearted individuals join me in that adventure. And then we're creating a universe, and you know, we'll see where it goes. But it's about capacity, it's about potential, it's about positive, you know, thinking and creation and stepping into what we have the ability to create. So for me, it's a challenge. It's fun. It brings me joy. I'm connecting with people who are very conscious, who have a lot of knowledge and information, and who teach me on a daily basis, great writers and speakers and people with content. And So, that's one way that I'm doing that. I hope somebody else will share too.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to share? I don't want to speak over someone else. If anyone would like to share something. Micah? Awesome.
Yeah, why not? So two things that I kind of like came to mind about disempowering things or disempowering programs is that lately I've asked myself, and I think this happens a lot on a subconscious level, is I think one of the reasons why we cannot get over something or we're constantly being pulled back into these disempowering programs is I think we have to consider, is there something that I feel like I'm getting out of this? Because I've noticed for myself, and I think for other people, on some level, whether you like it or not, you're being served by this program, by this person, by this relationship. And so it does take a lot of inner work and inner understanding or understanding to understand, okay, why is it that I keep being drawn to this, even if it's not necessarily a good thing? Because I know some things are really hard to overcome and get out of. And on some level, I think on a really deep, I guess, energetic level, maybe even, I don't want to say like atomic level, because I don't know necessarily the science terms, but I found within myself, there's some things that are just, it's like it's a past life or something in it that you're getting out of it. And once you address it on a deeper level, you might be able to see it from a bigger picture and like, okay, I can let go of that. The other thing about disempowering things, I totally relate to Christine about the social media stuff and just the news in general. It's like everybody's walking around like a zombie when you think about it, because they're all plugged into their phones, all plugged into social media. And I was doing this experiment myself, as there were times when I was like, I just get stuck in the scrolling. I'm like, what's going on? And I'd walk out and my day would be totally different. And what I was realizing is, even as I'm scrolling, and I think on a conscious level, I'm not taking in all of the negativity and all of the programming and all the stuff that's being sold. On a subconscious level, I am. And so all of that stuff is being reported. And as I go out and live my day, I'm not living it as the real me. I'm living it as, something I've seen, like a post or some of these subconscious and subliminal messages. So I think we need to be mindful of how is this stuff impacting us, not just while we're like on our phones or on social media, but as we go about our day, as we're living, as we're interacting with people. Because sometimes we think that we're just interacting as us, but it's based on something that we've read, based on something we've seen. It might be a smaller perspective on reality, as opposed to who we truly are. So that's my comment.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's almost like what we used to experience on TV, and we still do experience it on TV if we're still watching TV. But with the sports, like with the Super Bowl, for example, or with, big events that happen, there's always a collection of commercials and other things at high points where there's a lot of traffic on special events and things, where, that's when they put in the, like you said, subliminal messages to sell us something or to condition us or to get us to become more assimilated or acclimated to something new that's coming down the road, because they know that they're going to have a lot of people, a lot of eyes on that, and they can get people used to things and sort of work on us in this subconscious level, where now they've got a lot of people in front of something, looking at something. So, and they used to do that like on TV to try to sell us stuff and to, charge a lot of money for people to put up ads during those times and so on. It was this whole like system, a manipulation system, really, on many different levels. And so now it seems like they're doing the same thing on with these algorithms on Facebook and with the content that's driven on Facebook. So, it may seem like, you wake up in the morning, you feel like, okay, I'm about to get on my day, but you have this habit now of going and checking on Facebook first thing and having your coffee or something in the morning while you're getting ready. And then when you're on there, you see all of this stuff in your feed and you see these different things. And before you know it, what you had woken up feeling like, or what, you were connected, restored, refreshed, you got on here, and then all of a sudden it's, negativity or dumping or, so much stuff coming at you as far as people trying to sell themselves or sell programs or talk louder than everybody else, you know, and before you know it, it's like now I got to go to work. Now I got to go do my thing. But what am I feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like, I get overwhelmed. That's what the feeling I get when I tune in to how I feel when I'm on Facebook for even sometimes 10 minutes. And I can't do it before my own personal stuff in the morning. I just can't. I have to go and do my thing in nature and feed my animals and do my stuff before I can even attempt Facebook, because I want to be able to have that space and freedom to connect with myself and to do my own waking up routine and my own start my day off right for that exact reason, Micah, because I don't want to be taken offline. I don't want to be taken out of my, you know, my own power, my own thoughts, my own, you know, what's going on in my life and my brain and my, you know, perception for the day or my outlook. And because it's so easy and it happens so easily. So I hear what you're saying, and it can be very disempowering. So my advice would be to, you're doing it already, be mindful of it, and, you know, maybe construct a certain block of time that you're willing to be on social media for the day, and what time that is. Maybe make yourself a priority, make your stuff come first, like I'm doing, that it works for me. Mm-hmm. And if you have something to write, I don't know what you do, if you have something to write, or if you are somebody that creates something and you want to put your own thing out, do that first. So ignore everything else, do your content, and then, you know, you've delivered your message, you haven't gotten scattered, you haven't lost your focus, you've done the piece of work that you're coming on there to do. And then if you have time for the rest of it, fine, but limit it. And another thing that I highly recommend people do, it sounds awful, but this is a very empowered thing to do, is to go through and keep your energetic space clear. We have energetic space online. We have it in our homes. We have it in our own bodies in terms of keeping ourselves cleansed and toxins to a minimum as possible. It's the same online in our energetic space. Like, so, you know, going through, and there's this thing now, it's called, you can snooze people. And I thought, that's great. Like, you can press the thing where you can put somebody on snooze, I think, for 30 days or something, and you don't see their content coming. If, you know, so you can start to weed out some of the people that you never interact with, or maybe who are more negative than others, who impact your mood, who are always trying to sell you something, whatever. You can go in and you can have some more control over. And if you can't figure out how to snooze them, then just unfriend them. Just, if they're not somebody that you're interacting with and that, you know, you are impacting your energetic space positively, then don't hang out anymore. You know, yeah.
No, I was going to say, it's funny, I actually do some of that stuff. I've actually snoozed people and unfollowed certain people for that reason. I'm just now getting better at spacing out the time I'm on social media, because I do like to spend more of my time. And I'm in Maryland, so it's a little bit cold here right now. Although it was like 60 degrees today, so maybe it's not that cold today for some reason. But I usually try to go out. I usually go outside early in the morning, and if it's warm enough, I put my feet out on the ground, because that's a nice thing. Because I've noticed, for me, if upon waking up, if I have time, 10 minutes of silence, no thoughts, if I can get, you know, no thoughts, and then get outside, I'm much better for the day. But like you said, I've been working on like restructuring, particularly like midday when I take breaks for myself, for my work, because I do a lot of creative work, website design and writing. Mm-hmm. So even then, like, I need a break from the computer. But then sometimes it's like, oh, it's my phone. And then I'm like, okay, let me just restructure. And I've started doing that for the past few days, like what I look at, like you said, on following people, and then deciding like, okay, there's probably a better block of time I can organize this so that I can still, you know, be productive, see what's going on, but be empowered within myself and be at peace, so that, like you said, I have my space, my true space. I'm acting from me, who I am, instead of being reactive and acting from technological thing. Yeah, and that's wonderful, and you will notice an improvement. And then another thing people do sometimes is just take a break, take like a week off if you can. When you're in web design, that's a little harder because you've got to keep up with things and you know, look at
how something appears, let's say on Facebook and so on. So I know you got to be there, but yeah, otherwise take a break from it whenever possible, sometimes as you can. I noticed I took a break over the Christmas holidays and I came back. I think I was off Facebook something like 4 straight days without being on it. And I have a couple of pages, so I just scheduled them and I didn't go on. And when I got back on Facebook, after the break, I noticed within an hour of being on, I was tired. My eyes were tired. I felt like having a nap. That was a big signal to me. So
yeah, that was me.
Attention. Yeah.
I took a break from TV and it was great. And
yeah.
I didn't realize how great it was until I started looking at the TV again. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. So I've totally restructured my TV time. I barely watch any, and I'm like so glad. I can't take the frequencies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I too. I'm the same way. Well, this is really funny. I want to share this first, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. But I have to get up every morning and connect with nature first. And I have animals that I take care of. I rescue animals, so I take care of them. But I always go out, and it's been so cold in the South, I'm not used to this. Even when it's been like 9 degrees outside, I still go out, put my bare feet on the ground, and connect to the earth and the sun, and have that communication before I do anything else. Because I know that I need that so much in my life. I can see the difference when I have it and when I don't have it. And so this is such a funny story. So when I got on Facebook in the beginning, I came on with a purposeful meaning. And it was so funny because I was into religion. I was a Christian, and I was looking for like-minded Christian people to have Bible studies with, and, really explore, and how could I grow my relationship, with God. And so it was really meaningful to me. And so I was a big time Bible thumper. And so I'd come on. So the same person that you see today, I've just transitioned into more empowerment and knowing myself, because I've never used Facebook for frivolous stuff. It's always been like, I've got a message to say. I've always had something to say, and or something that I wanted to learn and share with other people. And so it's really interesting because through Facebook, it actually brought me out of my belief systems that I had, because we would go into these studies together. And every time that we would go deeper into study, someone would find something that didn't, sit well. And we research it till we saw that it was, all these things were contradictions. And it just went on this path of where, I am where I am today. And it was funny because my kids were like, why aren't you using social media for fun? What are you doing? Like, they couldn't get why I was so serious with social media. Now, here's the flip side to it. So that was the positive for me. It was a journey of where I'm at right now. Without Facebook, this wouldn't be happening. Okay. Here's the flip side though, which is one of the things that I've noticed, and I don't care what community you're in, whether you're on Facebook for entertainment, or whether you're on for research, if you're a truther, if it's your religious beliefs, if it's political, whatever it is, everyone will get a group of friends. And when you get this big circle of friends, everybody's like posting, and they're like, well, I'm going to post this because I know that I'm posting this. It's going to mean something to somebody, and I'm just going to tell the truth, and somebody will see this truth and it'll change the world. And what they failed to realize is we've deleted and blocked everybody that didn't agree with us. So we're looping that information around to one another. So everywhere you go, it's the same post on everybody's wall. And then people are like, why didn't you like my post? Why is it you'll like all the flowers and the trees and the rabbits, but if I put something serious on here, you don't like it? And I think it's because you're like, if I see one more negative thing, I'm just going to, yeah. And that's what ends up happening. It's not that you're no longer contributing anything. We're looping each other in. We're actually locking each other into this negative cycle. And that's what I found for myself. And so you would see where, like, I might post something really empowering, and the next day it's like, if you can't say something nice, just shut up, because I'll see something and I'm like, come on, it's enough. So what you're saying, I think we can all, because we're all here, I'm sure, because of Facebook. And I think we can all be, if we're honest, we can say there's days we've come on and we're just feeding each other back to back the same stuff over and over and over again, how in the world can that be positive? How can that be beneficial? And so the same way I said, what's disempowering, that's something that's disempowering. If you want to look and say, well, what's something that disempowers is disempowering, and why am I continuing to allow it? Well, then there's something that you're getting out of that. That's why you're continuing to allow it. What is it? What are you looking for? And what's empowering? So I would say the same thing. Look at what's disempowering you. Now, what can you do that is empowering?
Yeah. For me, it is about finding other like-minded people and creating something new with them, like moving forward, creating something new. I really can't spend a lot of time on all of the marketing stuff. You haven't seen me post anything for sale or any courses or anything like that, because I just don't. Maybe I will in the future. I don't know. But it's not a place where I've been able to be hanging out. And, I am more interested in building something new with people that has solutions oriented. Like, so for me, so as an example, I started Living Better probably 12 years ago, something like that now. And really that was about my waking up process and realizing that, and I used to give talks, not on video, but just live calls and things on, food and the water and the air and the pollution and chemtrails and GMOs and, supplementation and what was happening in the earth and organic gardening and all of these types of topics used to be near and dear to my heart. And I used to spend a lot of time talking about them in calls and things, because I had the hopes to wake people up and to give them solutions to have a better life, to have solutions in their life that they could put in their bodies, that they could, filter their water with, that they could remineralize their water with, that they could use a supplementation like soil-based organisms for the microbiome and the gut and all. I can just go on and on about all the things that I used to share. And so I created Living Better as a place to, as I became more empowered in my own life and found something that worked and tried something new or spoke with other people who also had solutions and so on, I would share their material or bring them in to, have their presentation or, whatever we were doing at the time, because that lit me up, because it was a way for me to give back. It was a way for me to spend my time online in a way that had solutions for people that could help people. And that was where I wanted to be. And I really felt at the time my purpose was to help wake people up. I don't feel like we need to necessarily go around waking people up anymore or spending our time and energy focused on the negative, telling negative stories, talking about all the negative all the time. I am really way more solutions oriented. I want to talk about solutions. I want to talk about where we're going. I want to talk about how we're going to get there. And so that's what I'm building now with this conscious living alternatives and taking kind of like the Living Better and finding those people, and they're all driving that content in there. So when you say we're getting something out of it, a lot of what people are getting out of Facebook and how they're interacting online is that adrenaline, that, oh, people like me, people are gonna buy what I'm selling, or people, if these 20 people like my thing, then the other 20 people will see that 20 people liked my thing, and then those 20 people might like my thing because they'll think I know what I'm doing, And so, and a lot of people's businesses are tied, their monetary business is tied to their Facebook, how they're interacting on Facebook and so on. So, people are coming on, and if they get likes and shares and all of this stuff, they not only get the adrenaline boost or maybe even the ego boost, but they're also seeing dollar signs maybe, or it's impacting their business. And there's a lot of things people get from Facebook. Some people just get a lot of attention. Like there's a lot of people that go on and talk about they stubbed their toe this afternoon, and so because 15 people will go, oh, I did that last week, and so we're all getting different things out of it. And the key is just to know for yourself, how do you feel? What is driving you to take that action or say that thing or do that thing? One of the things that I'm doing right now, Patricia, because you mentioned it, is I recognize that I don't have a tribe on Facebook because I've spent the last couple of years not really on Facebook, not doing much there, and working more in my reality life and working on my partnership and working on my children and in my garden and with my animals. And I really got close to nature and spent a lot of time, developing my lifestyle that I live. And so, and I wasn't sharing any of that online, and I wasn't really talking about it. And I sometimes wouldn't go on for days, and nobody knew me online. Nobody knew me at all online. So I went from being a public speaker and doing a bunch of things to like 2 years off. And so now what I'm doing online is, because I've started CLA and I've, started some partnerships with people in Living Better and building that again, and going to bring more creative content to that, and trying to, provide our energy signature, our service, our purpose, our collaborative purpose with other people to build a better world. I'm inspired to do that now. So what I'm actually doing on my personal Facebook now is I am talking about my daily life, or I'm talking about, my partner fell through the attic, and it was like a Christmas vacation scenario type of thing, so that people can see that I'm a real person and have a real life and have stuff going on, and build a little bit of a tribe with people that might resonate with me or get me, and that sort of thing. I have been trying to do a little bit more of that because I hadn't been. So, it just depends where people are at and who they want to connect with, what they're getting from it. But I don't think Facebook is a bad thing. I just think how we use it and how we recognize how we're using it is important. And,
Yeah. Who knew this would be a Facebook session?
I know, right?
but I use other forms of social media. There's always been a purpose for me personally, and but I do see exactly what everyone's sharing too, and I do see where there's times when I could be lured into something, and that's when I'm off balance, and I take responsibility for that, because that's when I'm not in check.
Yeah.
And so I have to be, again, it's creating with intentions. And so and when you're saying like you don't, you've been away for a while and you didn't have a tribe, and it's really not about likes or who agrees with you or whatever. To me, I also see Facebook as a way to express myself. Mm-hmm. And so just over time, it actually does unite you with people that you do share something really in common with, and that'll come. And you want it to be real. You want it to be authentic. You don't want people that you're just friending that really you never interact with. And I see that myself, even with doing Interstellar. You get a lot of friend requests, and I don't know a lot of people. And sometimes I feel badly, because now I feel like, oh, I've got these friends, and I feel responsible to acknowledge them, but it'd be impossible.
Yeah. And I think we can't really have a conversation about Facebook usage without mentioning our children and how the younger generations are growing up with it the way that we didn't grow up with it. And so this is another really big reason why it's important for us to be mindful about how we're using it, and find out what our driving reasons are for using it, because we're being watched by our children, and they're seeing what we're doing with it, and so they can get addicted to Facebook or get addicted to different forms of social media, and to cell phone usage, to carrying gadgets around. There's other reasons, good reasons, not to have the gadgets, like the 5G technology and the radiation and all of that sort of stuff. So we have to make more conscious choices and limit our time on them, and understand why and how we're using them, and not become zombified, and pass that on to our children and the education system and whoever will listen, because it is important that we don't all become zombies.
Yeah. I guess I got my twins they're going to be 29 in maybe a week or so. And my daughter doesn't have a Facebook. My son has one, and he uses it maybe once every few months. They just didn't really get into it.
Yeah.
I'm more the person that got into it than they did, but they don't have much of an interest at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, in kind of going to the back into the empowerment of, how we empower one another and ourselves, I am the creative power in my world. I am the one that is responsible, and I have that ability to create for my world, in my world. And the biggest thing about empowerment is going to go back to what we were talking about in the last webinar with Emma, is it has a lot to do with love and approval of ourselves. And so that's something that we really need to, take a look at and question, if I'm not loving myself, what's stopping me? If I don't approve of myself, what's blocking this? What is it that I need to look at internally so that I'm not being triggered by other people and I'm not feeling limitations that are not real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, does anybody else want to answer that? I think that we have to kind of look at what we want our life to be about. And so we have to look at things like how we're spending our time, how we're spending our energy, what we're participating in, and how we can take ownership or authorship for our life, and how we will make changes within it to spend our time differently, to pay our attention and our focus and our interest in areas that light us up, that are inspirational to us. So, it's like an accounting system almost, or a pro and con sheet, where if we could all just stop what we're doing and take even 10 minutes, would give somebody huge benefit just by taking 10 minutes and getting really real with those key things. Like if you break out a 24-hour day, for example, and say 6 or 7 of it, let's be real, is sleep, the rest of that time, how much of that time is spent on yourself, on anything that lights you up, anything at all that lights you up, where you're not, getting ready for something else, getting ready to go to work, driving to work, being at work, driving home from work, stopping at the grocery store so that you can come home and make dinner, making dinner, cleaning up from dinner, picking out what you're going to wear for work, and going back to freaking work after you go to bed.
Yeah.
So, like, if we could break out that time schedule and do like a pro and con, where am I spending my time, energy, and focus? And why? What does it give me? Like Micah said, what am I getting from it? And really look at those pros and cons. Like, so yeah, I might be getting an income. I might be getting benefits if I'm lucky. I might be getting some kind of a payoff in terms of my purpose from my job. I might be making good connections. It might just be a short-term thing to get me to the next thing. But how long have I been thinking about that next thing? How long have I been in the short-term thing to get me to the long thing? And it's never coming, like really. Sometimes people just stay in something that's comfortable.
Yeah.
Because the fear of change, fear of upsetting the apple cart and maybe losing the comfortable thing and this thing not working out is a fearful thing that keeps us from moving forward, keeps us stuck, keeps us settling. And we settle not just in our job, but we settle in our relationships, we settle in our health and wellness, we settle in even things like our parenting, right? In our parenting, we might be settled right now on a system that's working, but it may not be the system that we really want. We may not be imparting the wisdom and time and energy and whatever with our children that we really want to, because we may be involved in this other system that's taken all that time from us. And, you know, we're giving it, we're like, you can't blame the system. We are given that energy and time and focus over here when we really want to be given it over here. And so that goes on the pro and con list, and really taking a look at how we've structured and are participating and are showing up in our own life. And then start to look at how can we change that? How can we make changes? So I like to give examples. One of the ways that I really did this with my family was we spent a lot of time figuring out what our priorities were, and then looking at how we weren't in alignment with those priorities, which ways we weren't. So at the time when we did this, you're constantly renegotiating and readjusting things, but when we really did this and did that listing out, we were spending a lot of money and energy on foods and things and groceries and stuff that weren't supporting our health and our energy levels. And so then when it came to doing the things that we wanted to do, which maybe we might have had the time to do, but we didn't have the energy to do. We didn't have the commitment, the energy, the fire to actually do those things because we were failing in terms of taking better care of ourselves or getting enough exercise, or we were drinking like fluoride in the water. And so we wanted a filtration system. And we made all these little changes to what we were drinking, you know, how we were spending our energy in terms of our output every day, in terms of like clutter in the house, in terms of, you know, and these don't all apply to me, but let's say we're taking medications. Like I don't take any medications. We don't take a lot of medications, and that was a decision that we wanted to make. So we educated ourselves in natural remedies, and we go the more natural route with things, because the long-term plan for taking medications is more sickness, right? We're just covering up the sickness we're covering the symptoms when we're medicating and stuff. So eventually those medications lead to more symptoms of other things and so on. So we kind of had a long-term vision too, where we, you know, bought a filtration system rather than just jugs of water. We actually installed a filtration system and used that, or we went natural methods with the health and wellness. And so really take a look at those pros and cons and start to say, you know, if we could do this, then that would improve. If we could do that, then this would improve, and map it out. And we may not have the resources to do everything right away. We may not have the resources to go and buy a water filtration unit, and we might actually only be believing that they're expensive and that it's hard to do, when really we're spending how much on bottled water or whatever it is that people do. You know, some people spend it on bottled waters, buy the jugs, you know, and it all adds up. So you can get an under-the-counter water filtration system for like $150, install it yourself under there, and, you know, within 2 or 3 months, the money you would have spent on all that bottled water and all that waste, and bottled water is not good for you anyway, you know, because of the bisphenol in the plastics. So, you know, these are the types of things. Do your own research. Look into how much things are. What is it going to take to make that change? Barter if you can. Like, so my partner has a graphic design company. We bartered a lot when we were making those changes. Like, he would do some web work or a logo for somebody, and then we would, like, for a long time, he had a butcher, let's say, that was getting social media done by him, like graphics and different things. And this was a organic, locally raised, humanely treated, blah, 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 all this stuff type of a butcher. And he also had like other things in his shop that had to do with healthy eating and, you know, organics and all this kind of stuff. So Brad would trade, you know, skills of graphics, and he had these screens in his business. He would do the screens, and in return we would get store credit at his shop. So that helped us in terms of finances for the way that we wanted to eat organic, and we wanted to shop locally and so on and so forth. So that's just one example, but there are other examples that people can do. Some people babysit, some people mend clothes, some people, like everybody, all these working people who go to work every day, they're looking for seamstresses. They're looking for people that will hem their pants and do their things. And so we can all have side gigs and things. Maybe if you've got a sewing machine kicking around and and people know that you're able to do that. We have to find ways to do it. I built my own organic garden. I started gardening, and I've never stopped. I loved it from the moment go, and continued to develop it, continued to keep at it, save my own seeds. And so every year I don't have to go out and spend a fortune to build my garden. I've got the seeds from last year and the know-how from last year. And I may buy 2 or 3 new things just to keep it fun and exciting, but I keep building on what I already have. And now my kids are older, and now they're helping me, so I don't even have to do all the planting and harvesting myself anymore. And my recipe base has grown from it, and my ability to have natural herbal remedies has grown from it. And so we think we're just doing one thing, but things blossom and become more and better and greater where we spend our focus and our attention.
Yeah, that is empowerment right there. And I'm the same as you. I do not do medical doctors. I don't do medication. I do everything naturally and holistically. And my body now is so used to, or I'm so used now to listening to my body that I know exactly what it wants. And so there's no sickness in my body. There might be something like when a day where there was a lot going on and there might be fatigue or something, but my body is not in dis-ease. And so that is empowerment. And, and I think that's great. I mean, I think that you've just given a perfect example of how someone has taken control of their life and empowered their family. And you're also building skills that your children will have as adults, and they'll be empowered because of the way that they're growing up. So that was, fantastic. And I want to go back to, when we were talking about like doing things for yourself and being in joy. And, it's like you've got to you're saying, take 10 minutes, take whatever, just take some time for yourself. You have to pamper yourself inside and out. You have to give yourself me time to do the things that just bring you joy, that make you feel in harmony and balance with life. And Paul, I want to put you on the spot if you'll let me. Unmute, if you will. There's something that Paul is someone that I've got a group of friends that are really close to me, and we meet whenever we can. And I haven't been able to be as committed to the schedule as Paul and the others have been because of doing Interstellar. And but we talk, and there's something that Paul has started doing for himself, and it can't interfere with the group gathering. So Paul, what is it that you do for yourself?
You mean what I post?
No, you've got a new hobby that you do, and you don't miss the class.
Yeah, like that. And yes, you mean with the SFG group?
Your dance class.
Yeah, the dancing. Yeah, and I've done that since 2012.
Okay, yeah.
Danza. And that's like 10 times a season. So that's something I really enjoy. And I also ride once a week. I have the opportunity to ride a big horse close by. So there is things I do. Mm-hmm. I just at the moment, so thank you for putting me on the spot, because I was kind of bubbling inside. So at the moment I'm going through a kind of very strong contrasts. So like yesterday I could be in a very centered, very strong place, and today and now I'm really kind of like in an internal meltdown kind of feeling with the energies and everything. So this is what I'm going through this year, and no, I mean the past year. It's a lot of extremely strong processes happening, and a kind of a difference between feeling very centered and feeling like the energies and everything is. So something is working inside, and I'm just like now. I stayed with the whole sharing because I also want to be present with what I'm feeling, so not escaping from it or just going to bed or something. So that's why what happens with me at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking, I have noticed like Paul has really I have seen him so empowered. If you actually look at some of the things that he personally has shared on his Facebook page, you can see that he has just really started stepping into his sovereignty and really feeling empowered. And before there was a little bit of, I feel like maybe disconnect and a lack of empowerment. And I've just really been excited to see how much he's come out of his shell. And also, you know, like he connects with the horses. He always shares about how when we're talking about the way we connect, he has horses around where he lives so he can connect with the horses and nature. And then he does for his enjoyment dancing. And, you know, it's just little things like that make such a huge difference in your perception of reality and your enjoyment through it in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm in this state, like I'm now, it's like complete. Well, I realized it's a very good training because I'm completely pessimistic. I don't see any light out, nothing. But I also realized I'm so used to also to be with these different feelings, so I don't. I don't believe too much in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I experience it, but I don't believe too much in it. So I'm kind of working it.
Well,
that's maybe also why I become more empowered, also slowly becoming more empowered.
When you're feeling pessimistic, have you noticed something? Do you notice something that is occurring in your life that brings that about, or does it just come without your awareness, like it just hits you?
No, of course, it's one of the things is that I'm living very much alone. And maybe I'm also living in a place which is not ideal. And it's just like all these things which is not really working out. So that's probably also. And at the same time, I'm a fire phoenix in Vedic astrology. And this year is the same sign. So I'm going through a lot of restructurings inside. And this is also quite scary in a way, but I'm also optimistic.
Yeah, so that's very similar to what I was saying in the beginning, how even though it seems like things are revealing themselves and we have this sense of willingness to take a look at things and to feel them and to be present to them, and even though it's scary, even though it may require courage, even though we don't know what's on the other side of it, we've kind of reached this place within humanity. It's not just Paul, it's not just me. There's many people going through this process of things coming up for reevaluation and people actually being willing in a space of willingness and a consciousness level of willingness, which resonates higher than anger and grief and unworthiness and shame and all of those other places where we may have been in the past, but now we're at willingness. And, you know, we have this willingness to want to do things different, to want to take a look at them, to want to sit with what is, to be okay with what is, what actually comes up, how we participated, how we show up, who we really are, what we really think, how we really feel, and be okay with what is and sort of like surrendered to the now moment of allowing it to be what it is and acknowledging it without having to change it, without even having to do anything to it. And, you know, there's also a school of people that believe that as things come up, they really have to go into it and go after it and find other people who are going to go after it and go into the flames of what it is and really burn off any egoic structure that's in there and burn off anything that's, you know, holding them back or whatever, and they're going after it. But in my experience, you know, we don't even have to do that. If things will arise, things come up naturally. We can look at them and feel them and not feel a struggle associated to it, not feel a should or I must and I need to and I got to get to this level and all of these things. It's going to happen naturally on its own as we become more conscious, as we have new awarenesses, as we're in this willingness, as things open up, things just automatically arise for us, or out externally something will trigger us and we'll be in a place where we can say, why is that triggering me? Why am I feeling this way? What am I getting out of that when I get triggered and I act in that behavior and I do that thing? What am I getting from that? Because I just keep doing it, and it's really old. Like, I'm really overdoing that now. And I want to know why. I'm willing to look at my own behavior. I'm willing to sit with it and feel the feelings of it and figure out, how come I keep repeating this pattern in relationships? How come, I keep stuffing my face instead of saying what I really think? How come there's so many examples where they just come and we're just willing to take a look at them. And if we want, we can really go after them. We can really and I believe that both things work. Both things, may be necessary. Like in the case of when you're reparenting yourself from old wounds, from stuff that isn't happening right now that we're being triggered by right in this moment, but stuff that's from way past that is still just sort of playing out. We may have to go back and do some digging and feel, depending on who we are and what lessons we're here to learn, that may be the way that we have to go after it. And, and whatever it is, it will have benefit. It does work. Taking time for yourself, figuring out those situations, assessing our feelings, feeling worthy enough, and standing in our own power and recognition of ourselves because we're worth it. There can be nothing that can go wrong from that. We can't not win from doing that self-discovery and that self-investigation. And then as things click into place and we gain more confidence, we use those courage muscles and we keep moving in that direction, we do lighten up. We do get more capacity. We do have, better relationships. We are able to let that thing go. And we are able to communicate better. We are able to just show up without bringing it all with us. We are able to do all of these wonderful things. So important.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to acknowledge, one of the things that Paul said, so this really is important to me to acknowledge this, because I do hear this a lot with people that I do sessions with and with people that I talk to in, platforms like this. And when he said, and maybe one of the reasons is I'm alone. And some of us are really busy. We'll have a husband and we'll have children, we'll have animals, we have careers, we have all these different things going on. And so we're trying to figure out how to maximize everything that we're doing in our time frames and how to, be where we need to be for certain people to make sure that they're taken care of emotionally and physically and that they know that they're loved, where other people are sitting there alone saying, what do I do with my time? And that can be really as hard as trying to deal with all the multiple people in your life, because that's a real, that alone may feel disempowering to someone. So, I do want to acknowledge that, and because I do hear that quite a bit. And so I do, and I just want to acknowledge that I do, sympathize with that feeling of being alone and trying to find your empowerment and how to be complete and whole in that aloneness that you have.
Mm-hmm. And he's doing it. He's feeling it. He is sitting in that awareness. Yes. and letting it be as it is.
Mm. Yes, before I would escape, but now I have the feeling of wanting to escape, but I don't do it. So that's the willingness you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then you could join a bowling league. You could start dancing with more people. Yes. Connection is really key, but so is just accepting where you're at and realizing the world is not, falling apart right where you are in the now moment. When you're in surrender and when you're in acceptance of what is, it's not the end of the world.
No.
It isn't the end of the world. The next moment comes.
Yes, and of course I experienced much more than before this days of clarity and centeredness, and where I'm able to share things which is also within me. So I experienced the fruits of also a lot of time working with myself. But I still have when I'm in a space like this, I still have the urge to escape because it's so strong. It's like, it's really a lot of traumas coming up at the same time, it seems. And that is a tough thing, but I also know that it's a kind of a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that too, because I feel like that there was a period of time, Paul. I never went through loneliness, but I did feel I had a lot of alone time, and so I felt like I didn't have a purpose. So there was a period of time where, all of a sudden my whole life had been just chaotic stress and survival mode, and all of a sudden I had just all this free time on my hands, and then I was like, well, I have no purpose, and that started to make me feel like, what am I doing? And then I started really looking within myself, and this is when my whole healing process started. I was like, oh, this is me time. This is actually the time for me to focus on what it was that was causing all of this pain and lack of self-worth. And so I too found that time to be precious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was a time of great growth. And I think that it's just now we just open our mind and our heart, and we set our intentions, and we just look for what's appropriate in our life and what's necessary for our life. And we know that we need joy. We know that we need love. We know that we need empowerment. And so if we look for what we can do and what we can experience and how we can be to bring those things into our life. That's all, folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just, is there anything that anyone would like to share? Bjorn, there's no way that we're letting you say goodbye silently. You have got to say something.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for sharing your journeys, Christine and Patricia and the rest of you. I have so many, it's so inspiring just to sit here and listen. So many ideas. I feel so incredibly encouraged. And there was a sentence sort of popping into my head that sounded like accepting the gift of darkness. When I went on Facebook, it was 2016, I started sharing creative things immediately, stories and, posters and short sentences and everything, and it was very creative and I loved it. But then there was a part of me that was hooked on likes. But I could see what it was. It was of a child that never really got a response doing creative things. And I didn't. The school system never really gave me any feedback, neither did my parents. So there was a repeat. But I could see it coming up. I could see it for what it was. It was the inner child that, yes, expressed creativity, but wanting to have a confirmation of likes, an external confirmation. Am I, Mummy, have I done something good? Daddy, am I good enough? So when I could see that as a representation, it was like darkness or the repression of loneliness or whatever. It was pronounced through Facebook. It was pronounced through the artificial system. It was pronounced even clearer for me, so I had a choice. Can I see this and can I release it? Can I just enjoy the creativity, just enjoy the flow of it and not be addicted to the lights? And eventually I did. So instead of judging it, instead of, rejecting darkness and not wanting to look, gradually I accepted that it actually pronounced something that corresponded to a facet of me or a part of my vibration. So I ended up using the artificial system as a tool of like a magnifying glass that it made me see something that was in me ready to be released clearer. So I accepted the gift of darkness, and I said, no, I'm just going to enjoy the creativity. I don't mind I don't care how many likes I get, comments. And then it disappeared because I was my own mother and father. I just loved being creative. I didn't need the approval. And then, of course, the anger, being attracted to conspiracy theories, being angry at politicians and everything. There was some anger there, and that was later in my early 20s, I think. Some residue, very easily channeled, of course, into certain Facebook groups and all that. But I could see that as well. It was anger that I couldn't pronounce and express towards my parents. And then it came up in a different form, because if it's repressed, it'll just keep on coming in a different form, maybe towards a colleague or whatever. But Facebook could pronounce that as well, because the artificial system, of course, wants to recycle it, give it a mask, and create an identity. I hate politicians. I hate, reptilians. And then, but you could also just pronounce it, just see it for what it is. I could see the inner child wanting approval, or the angry one wanting to lash out. So I accepted the gift of darkness, used the artificial system to my advantage as a magnifying glass in order to orient myself. So you can become the architect, or you can become the observer, or your own father and mother. All these things are available for you, and you can just flip it upside down. You can say, well, I can use darkness as a tool. It's an observational tool. It's a representation, whatever. Yeah. And I think the fear of the artificial system reminds me of the fear of the devil, and if you fear it and repress it, you give it more energy. So it's a repeat, but it's an accelerator, because now, instead of having very separate cultures, each having their own devil, you have a common devil, which is the artificial system. And we can then quicker and more effectively share and compare notes, share our feelings, our thoughts, and see how they are channeled and used by the artificial system into, anger groups or victim role groups and all that, and much more easily orient ourselves. And then each one of us will make our choices. Do I judge myself? Can I see that this is a temporary vibration in me? And I think the whole thing is accelerating, and I can see very good things coming out of this, actually. And I have a question for Christine.
Okay, thank you, Bjorn, for that. It's beautiful, and it's about being with what is, right? And just allowing it to come up, allowing yourself to see it, and then take some action, take some empowerment, take some direction with it.
Sure, and I had a question came into my mind an hour ago, I think. If you have a strife with a mother or a father or a brother, some very hard, great animosity, some hard feelings, whatever it is, and the person is deceased, and you can't really speak, face to face, and the memory still haunts you. How do you release that?
I think it does. It's the same. I think it's the same way. And I don't have that I don't have that experience where I have unfinished business with somebody that's now deceased, that, you know, I don't have that personally. So I'm just going to do my best with answering that. But I think we have to sit with what is, allow those feelings, allow those acknowledgments, allow that sadness, allow that grief, allow all of those emotions that are unfinished in you or in whomever is going through it, to be as they are. And there's nothing wrong with how things have happened, how things occurred. They just are what they are. And you can't change what's already happened in the past. You can't change what's happened. All you can change is your perception of it. And our perception of things, our awareness of things changes by looking at that darkness, by looking at that fear, by looking at those unfinished emotions, by, you know, acknowledging what they are and being okay with, and sitting, when I say being okay, I mean sitting with what is. It's a fact. These are facts. This is how I felt. This is what
right.
These are facts. It's happened. It's, you know, and I'm not going to disavow my feelings. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't glad that that person died, or I wasn't, you know, I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't angry at that person. In the moment when they died, I was glad for, I'm just using examples. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just saying, you know, somebody could die and we could be in a place in ourselves, in our life, that we're glad they're not harming us anymore, that they're not attacking us anymore. And, you know, we could at that moment in time feel that way. And then 10 years later think, holy shit, I'm a different person now. I've got a different level of consciousness. I realized they were just operating on the systems that they were operating on, and with their beliefs that they had. And, you know, they were unable to support me, and they took out their frustration or anger on me, and blah, blah, blah. It was a bad scene. And we had all this friction and stuff happened. And I felt how I felt. And you know what? It is what it is. And I was entitled to my feelings. I can't change how I felt. And now that I know better, I can feel differently about it, or I can accept it, or I can say, you know, I hope wherever you are watching me now, or wherever things are at where they're at, as they are, I accept myself, I accept my role in it, I accept my anger, I accept what I said, I accept what I did, I accept what I didn't do. I'm okay with me. I'm going to honor all those feelings, and have some, like, a self-loving, self-honoring perspective about what you can change, which is, you know, how you perceive that whole thing by looking at it and by feeling all of that. Things are going to come up for review, for release, and people can get more neutral, more centered, less triggered by it all. Let those feelings come up, finish those feelings, turn the emotional triggers into feelings, and then they can be released. But if we don't feel them, there's still emotional triggers and patterns that are going to keep repeating, keep coming up in different ways in our reality, because they're in our belief system. We believe those things about ourselves. We believe we were nasty, or we didn't do whatever, or we were unforgiving, or we were callous, or we believe these things about ourselves that may not actually be true, and we don't know that until we actually finish them, until we actually finish that feeling, those unfinished emotions, right? So this is where that work comes in, and it takes as long as it takes. I can't say that just because you spend an afternoon thinking about all that, it's going to be better. It takes as long as it takes, and then other things will happen in your life or in the person's life where something else will come up, and another awareness will come up, and it'll keep happening until it is finished. Things will keep happening because your soul wants you to be your best self, to to play at your best game, to be your full potential. And so it's going to keep coming until you are free, until
Right.
you're free from it. So that's all.
Well, and I have something I would like to share on that, because I actually that was a real life scenario for me. My mom died in 2000, and Bjorn, you know, when you and I did our first discussion on Interstellar, and I read, I don't want to misquote the title. I want to say, "Good night, Mommy, you're my greatest teacher."
Yeah, right. Well, that's actually even better, but it was Good night, Mummy, you're my favorite demon.
Okay. My favorite demon. Okay, my favorite demon,
Sure.
But, okay, so for me, when I read that, it was so powerful to me, because I remember it in 2000, my life with my mom was unresolved.
Right.
And so all the trauma it was very interesting, because when she died, and I just want to be honest, I had been through so much hurt that I didn't rejoice in her death. I actually took responsibility. I was the only one that did take responsibility to make sure that she was, her remains were taken care of. Nobody else would even wanted to deal with it. And I went through the processes, and I did that. But there was this huge relief, and I just thought, wow, she's not on this planet anymore. And it was like I could breathe for a minute.
Yeah.
And there was just this release. But then as years passed, like Christine was saying, okay, so you go down the line. Well, there was that relief in her not being there. But the residual was still there from the past. So that was something that was still inside of me that needed to be released. And so what happened, I mean, years and years later, so probably 2015 is when I really started to deal with all of that was inside of me that she couldn't really resolve for me.
Yeah.
At this point, though I felt our energy was still entwined, there was a lot of things where we were just still kind of connected, unresolved things. And I remember when I started doing my own healing work, I just broke down, and I think I broke down with my husband, and I was bawling, and I was sobbing, not for myself, I was sobbing for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time that I was able to be really in a situation to where I could say, I love you. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the strength, the wisdom. I've got chills just talking about it. Thank you for how hard you were on me, because, and I guess that's why I said I twisted yours and said greatest teacher, because I feel like she was in many ways my greatest teacher.
She was, yeah.
Yeah. And so at that point, I realized how strong I was in comparison to how weak she was, and how much she relied on me in ways that I was her mother and she was my child, and she didn't know how to be a parent. And so once I could get out of the place of feeling anger and resentment, I could be empathetic, and I could love her just the way she was, regardless of the experiences that we had together. And that helped me a lot.
Absolutely. And the story continues. I think it was Good morning, Mommy, you're my favorite angel. So you go into the pitch black, and then in the midst of it, you inject some space and you transmute it. There's many ways of doing this. Each have their own journey, of course, but it's so powerful.
It is. It really is.
What we're saying there is that the love, attention, honor, worthiness that we eventually give to ourselves, when we are able to give it to ourselves, only then are we able to give it to the other.
Yeah,
exactly.
Authentically, from a place of real authenticity, able to give it to the other. And so in many cases it is after the person's left, and when there's the triggering isn't going on, that friction isn't there, and we've had some space. And
definitely, and it could be potentially a little bit tricky, because the individual might not even have contemplated life after death, and having some space around memories, and so but I think this is opening up in the cultures as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we can start to have just a little bit of space and finishing off.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to repress and project all these artificial masks, you know, and get stuck in them. But we can use them as a tool, as a pronouncer instead, and just take charge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Christine and Patricia.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on, and that's great. And what you're saying right there, so what's happening within happens without, and it's happening not only in these little, you know, individualized scenarios, how our frame of reference is, but as we are able to open up and as we're becoming more open and able to see for ourselves what really is, be with what really is, and then the same thing's playing out on the world stage where all of this is coming to light, and we can see what really is, what's happening, what really has happened, what's been going on, and we can see that and sit with that in the same way that we had to have self-honor and self-love and take our courage and step into our sovereignty and change our own lives and so on. The same way that that's happening now, we're in this space where we can come back. Like, I had to step away from Facebook. I had to get away from it because I couldn't deal with, I was doing my own processing. It was overwhelming, and there was so much going on. And the same thing is in the world right now. There's a lot going on. There's a lot falling apart. But now I am in a place where I took that time. I did that self-honoring. I did that work. I made all these changes. I know it's possible. I can start talking about it to other people, and I can demonstrate it, and I can show it. And there's other people like me who also can. This is how we can now take what we've learned, take that honor, take that knowledge, and we can decide how are we going to show up now. Now that we know we're okay with what is, we can see it, even though some of it's like really awful and really painful, and what we've created and how we treat animals and how the world's polluted and how we've allowed the medication and vaccines and how we've allowed all of this to get by us because we were like zombified and you're stuck in our own trauma-based mind control and AI control and all of these ways we've been, but now we're not. It's all changing. It's all shifting. We're self-honoring. We're looking at it. We're making changes one by one, every one of us. We're not identifying with all of the things that we identified with before. We're not identifying with, I'm a victim. We're not identifying with, you know, I still have this friction with my family member and blah, 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 blah. Now we're disidentifying from all of that and being okay with what is. And we're now able to come back in. I am able to come back in now and show up in a way that is how I want to create now. Now, how do I want to be? How do I want to make the change? How do I want to live better? How do I want to have conscious living alternatives? How do I want to collaborate with other people? How am I going to show up? And we're all at different stages of that, but that is where we're going, and that's where we're coming to, and we're going to get there together.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. And it doesn't matter if anyone doesn't like that we feel empowered. It's okay to feel good about yourself. It's okay to feel excited about life. It's okay to be in joy. It's okay to love being who you are and living the way you want to live.
It is. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, if no one else has anything to share, then Christine, if you have anything that you want to close with, the floor is yours. And thank you everyone for being here and for sharing what you did share.
Yes, thank you everybody. And I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Patricia, for opening me up further and for using your gifts. And I really appreciate that. And I hope we do get to do it again sometime. I mean, there's a ton of topics that we could be talking about. And that's the key. We just have to keep talking about things. We have to keep, you know, communicating and showing up and coming back in. And that's how we're going to get there. So I appreciate everybody so much. for coming and being here today and participating. And I love you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, we can do this again. And I just want to put this out there. You know, this is what Interstellar is about. This is what I would like to see for the future. One of the things that I've made, that I've said to myself is that I really want people, I don't want to go out and pursue people or push them out of their comfort zone so much as I want them to want to do this. So if anyone says, hey, you know, Patricia has Interstellar, she's really open to holding webinars. If you've got something that you want to share, anybody, just, you know, let me know, because this is what I want to do. I want to get the conversations going and bring us together and empower one another. So, you know, this is for us. It's not just for me.
Thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I guess we will be closing. And again, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you for
Bye,
being here,
everybody.
Lars, Mary Sue,
Bye.
Dusty, Cheryl,
Thank you.
Dawn,
Bye.
Micah,
Bye.
Carmela,
Bye,
Paul, Bjorn,
Bye.
Marina.